Alright guys, so I'm going to go through the two problems that we did in class, because sometimes I know that you don't really write down everything that's said in class. You get kind of the stuff that's on the board, but then you're so into writing down the stuff on the board that you don't hear the other things that are said. So let's talk through the two problems from class, and hopefully that will help you as you're trying to do the other problems from your worksheet. Okay, so let's start off with this one. Y equals x squared plus 3x minus 2. And we'll try to solve it. So the first thing that we do is we need to find the x-intercepts, the y-intercepts, the vertex, and then we'll fill in the other points if we can. I like to start with the y-intercept. The reason being just because if you start with the y-intercept, then you know you're going to get a point to start off with. A quadratic won't always have an x-intercept. And so let's start off with the y-intercept. How do we get a y-intercept? It's the same thing as when we were doing linear equations. We get the y-intercept by making x equal to 0. So let's go ahead. We'll make x equal to 0. We'll go y equals 0 squared plus 3 times 0 minus 2. So let's go ahead and do that. That gives us 0 plus 0 minus 2. So y equals negative 2. So there's our first point. X is 0, y is negative 2. And I can go ahead and put that on. And I'll label it 0, negative 2. All right. Now let's go on and move to the x-intercepts. So the x-intercept is when y equals 0, just like when we did linear graphs. So we're going to make y equal to 0. We're going to go 0 equals x squared plus 3x minus 2. And so now I need to try to solve for x. Now in solving for x, the first thing I'm going to try is factoring. There's nothing common, so it's a trinomial. We'll break it up into two sets of parentheses. But unfortunately, no matter how I try this, because there's a negative, plus and minus, with a 1 and a 2, this isn't ever going to work. Switching the numbers isn't going to work. I got a negative 2 and a positive 1. I'm not going to be able to factor this. And so since I can't factor it, let's erase that. And we're going to go back to, well, how do we get the answer if we can't factor it? Hopefully you remember the quadratic formula. X equals negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And so if we put those numbers in, we've got x equals negative b is 3, plus or minus the square root of b, which is 3 squared, minus 4 times a times c, and then divide by 2 times a. So x equals negative 3 plus or minus the square root of, we'll simplify, 3 squared is 9. Negative 4 times 1 is negative 4 times negative 2 is 8, so plus 8. And see, this is why I couldn't factor it earlier, because when I have the 9 plus 8, I'm going to have x equals negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 17 divided by 2. And so now I need to find out what that is. So I'm going to bring up my rinky-dinky calculator, and we're going to go negative 3 plus, and then we're going to do the square root of 17. I'm going to push equals, and then I'm going to divide by 2. And so there we go. We've got 0.561. 0.56 is probably good enough. And I'm going to do the same thing. Now, you can put something in parentheses as well. I did the negative 3 plus root 17 first and pushed equals, so I would get that. And then I divide it by 2. You can also go parentheses, negative 3 minus the square root of 17, and then close the parentheses, and then divide by 2. Both of those will get you the same answer. This time I'm going to get, I did the minus, so I got negative 3.56. We'll go ahead and put both of these down. So 0.56 is about right here. Negative 3.56, negative 2, negative 3.5. Remember, these are the x-intercepts, right? So I've got 0.56 comma 0, and I've got negative 3.56 comma 0. All right, and we will continue this shortly. So we've got the x-intercepts. We've got the y-intercept. Now we need What's the missing point? Well, we've talked about before, the other important part on a quadratic graph is the vertex. Now, the vertex we've talked about before, you can actually find the axis of symmetry, which is important for the vertex, but you can find the axis of symmetry by finding the center of 2 points, because 2 points should be reflected across some mirror image or some line of symmetry. Now, there's another way to do that. You can also find the x value of the vertex or the axis of symmetry by doing something from the quadratic formula, which is just this part right here, negative b over 2a. The plus moves points to the right. The minus moves points to the left. So the negative b over 2a is without moving to the right or left, so that's the central line. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to find the x value of the vertex by doing negative b over 2a. Now that's actually going to be pretty easy. I'm going to shorten it now to be xv equals negative. Now b is 3 over 2 times a, which was 1, which is negative 3 over 2, which is negative 1.5. Now, keep in mind that is just the x value. That is also the axis of symmetry. So I'm going to go ahead and draw that in. So right here, there's my axis of symmetry at x equals negative 1.5. And you can see that that cuts it in half. Both of these points are about the same distance away from that axis of symmetry. The vertex will be somewhere on that axis of symmetry. And by looking at the points, we can kind of figure out, well, it should be somewhere down here. But where exactly is it, we now need to figure out. So in order to do that, we're going to take the x value of the vertex. And how do we get a y value? Well, we plug it into the equation. So we're going to go y equals negative 1.5 squared plus 3 times negative 1.5 and then minus 2. And we're going to solve that. I'm going to go ahead and use my calculator here. So we're going to go 1.5 and then square it. So we're just going to go times another 1.5. So 2.25. And then we're going to go plus 3 times negative 1.5 is negative 2.25. And then we need to subtract the 2 on the end. And so we get negative 4.25. So the y value equals negative 4.25. So I put those two together and I get the point, which is negative 1.5, negative 4.25. And so that's my vertex. So I go to the negative 1.25 and then I go 1, 2, 3, 4, and about a quarter right there. Okay, so now I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 points. I need a 5th point. I told you in class that we need 5 points. You can do a number of things if you want. You can recognize that this Y-intercept is 1.5 spaces away from your axis of symmetry. So there should be another point 1.5 spaces away on the other side. So that would be negative 3 comma negative 2. You can also see, I didn't label this point. There we go. Okay, you can also, if you don't want to use the axis of symmetry, you can just plug in another number. You could have plugged in negative 3 into the equation. This is just using a table, right? You could put in 2 if you wanted to see what it looks like up here. Plug in 2. You go y equals 2 squared plus 3. You can put any number in for x, but please choose a number that's going to allow you to work this out. So 4 plus 6 is 8. 10 minus 2 is 8. So if x equals 2, y equals 8. So you could have put that down, right? You can reflect that. At this point, it doesn't really matter as long as you've got 5 points. So now we can draw our line, which looks something like this. And it's done. All right, so that's number 1. We'll watch the other video for number 2.